There's a song I've been listening to a little bit lately called Surrounded. I think it originally was by Michael W. Smith, but I've been listening to it from the upper room. In fact, it was in our playlist last Sunday. And one of the reasons why I think it's kind of appealing to me right now is because when life is difficult or doesn't go like we want it to, and there's lots of disappointment, there's lots of grief, there's lots of maybe anger, maybe a lot of other emotions mixed up together, we start feeling overwhelmed and we feel like we're just completely surrounded and we're just like drowning. And so one of the things that I really like about this song is that it's one of those songs that helps you to change your perspective on what you're actually surrounded by. Now there's a story from 1 Kings chapter 6 that I want to talk about a little bit. It's a story about Elisha, and so Elisha at the time is the prophet in Israel, and the king of Aram has this vendetta against the king of Israel and wants to trap him, and keeps trying to build these ambushes. So what happens is God keeps telling Elisha that it's going to happen, and so he goes to the king and tells the king each and every time. And so the king of Aram is like, "What is going on? This is crazy." In fact, he gets all his officers together and who's the snitch? Like who's ratting us out? And one of his, of course, they all say, "Well, none of us. We're all loyal to you." And somebody pipes up, "Well, there's this prophet named Elisha, and his God keeps telling him where you're laying the ambush." And so the king of Aram goes, "Okay, well, find me Elisha." And so we want to pick up the story. They find Elisha in this city called Dothan, and so the king sends an army there. I want to pick up the story in verse 14 of chapter 6. "Then he sent horses and chariots and a strong force there. They went by night and surrounded the city. When the servant of the man of God got up and went out early in the next morning, an army with horses and chariots had surrounded the city. 'Oh no, my lord, what shall we do?' the servant asked. 'Don't be afraid,' the prophet answered. 'Those who are with us are more than those who are with them.' And Elisha prayed, 'Open his eyes, Lord, so that he may see.' Then the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he looked and saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha." Now, I find this is a fascinating story. And there's two words that I want to key in on here. And one of them was actually from my last, my 5 cents. It's talking about presence, God's presence. One of the reasons why I think it's super important to be more aware of God's presence is because your awareness of God's presence in your life will affect your perspective. And perspective matters because your perspective will guide your choices, will guide how you view life, will even guide your emotions and your feelings regarding what's going on around you. And so I think that's so important. And so what we have here, we have Elisha, who knew the presence of God in his life, and who that presence gave him faith in light of what was happening all around him. And so his servant gave into fear instead of faith. And so what happens is God opens the eyes of the servant so that he can see through faith what Elisha can see. And so I think one of the things that we can take away from this story for us today is that in facing what we're facing today, we feel surrounded. We feel subdued. We feel overwhelmed. We feel maybe lots of fear. And so my hope and my desire for you coming from a passage like this is that key in on God's presence in your life, because God's presence, the awareness of God's presence, will open the eyes of your heart, that only faith can open, to see what actually surrounded, that you are surrounded by God himself more than any other problem or anything else that you are facing. And so that's a little word of encouragement today, and I just hope that you have a great day and this little word helps.